The theory making the rounds that the American dream is dead, that Europe's got it all figured out with their vacations and healthcare, and that Americans are basically living in a failed state by comparison. It's seductive if you've never actually been here. But here's what's wild. Europeans who've actually spent time in America are telling a completely different story, quietly dismantling this entire narrative just by existing and talking about their experiences. If you're curious about what's shifting perceptions across an entire continent, stick around. And if you want more analysis like this, hit subscribe so you never miss the next one.
What message do I have to the people of the world? When you have to record something and say something, but you have nothing to say, you say this.
The first thing that hits almost every European visitor is ambient hospitality. It's not a single act of kindness. It's the baseline expectation that strangers will treat you with genuine warmth. A Scottish tourist documented his first week in New Orleans and kept returning to the same realization. People would stop him on the street, ask where he was from, and effectively invite him into their social world.
True, you guys have different taps for hot and cold water. You're telling me that in America you only have one tap for hot and cold? Huh? What? This can't be a thing. This cannot be a thing. I thought everyone had two taps. You got the colour red for the hot tap, you got the colour blue for the cold tap. What? Got to be tricking me. You have to be tricking me.
Can someone explain this to me? I don't understand why you have two faucets for one sink. So obviously this side is hot, this side is cold, but like...
A shop clerk didn't just answer questions. She texted him recommendations and called ahead to restaurants. A German visitor spent a week in the South and was invited to dinner by a family he'd met at a gas station after a 15-minute conversation. Compare that to Edinburgh, where a stranger saying hello is almost transgressive. A French traveler met a police officer at a football stadium who spent 20 minutes discussing American sports with zero stiffness. These aren't isolated moments. They're patterns that repeat across hundreds of travel vlogs. European social culture keeps distance. American culture assumes strangers might become friends.
I love America and I want to be an American, so I've got their breakfast that they have every single morning, which is a coffee and a donut. I'm gonna need one of you Americans to adopt me so that I can have this breakfast every single morning.
Is that what? This? There? Oh, that is so good.
An English visitor kept returning to the same point. People seem to assume the best until given a reason not to. Scale is where things get genuinely humbling, because the gap between intellectual understanding and lived experience becomes impossible to ignore. You can know rationally that the United States is 3.8 million square miles, but driving for 6 hours across Texas and realizing you've covered maybe a quarter of a single state hits different. Gas stations aren't pit stops, they're small cities. A Buxy's Travel Center in Texas is 74,000 square feet with over 2,000 food items.
Let's try Terry Black's barbecue in Fort Worth, Texas. Starting with this giant beef rib. This rib alone was $68. Cheers. Oh my goodness. That is some of the best meat I've ever had in my life. Moist, flavorful, tender, absolutely everything I want in a rib. Next we have their brisket, and it is literally falling apart.
A Dutch visitor stood in the entrance genuinely unable to process the scale compared to European petrol stations. Supermarkets operate on similar logic. An American grocery store would be considered inexplicably massive in most European cities. A portion of cereal that costs twice as much in Germany gets you double the quantity in America. This reflects a structural decision to prioritize consumer abundance over margin compression. Germany made the opposite choice. That difference echoes through everything. Highways that dwarf European equivalents, trucks that seem comically enormous, stadiums holding 6 times European crowds, homes with spare bedrooms because land is abundant. A German economist documented supermarket prices and kept reaching the same conclusion. The United States has made a choice about what abundance means for freedom. The natural world hits differently too. Americans take for granted that they can drive 8 hours and encounter radically different biomes and geological formations. Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, reshape how you think about time and scale. A Norwegian visitor who'd seen plenty of Scandinavian landscape went to the Grand Canyon and came back rattled. Nothing prepared her for that age and depth and indifference. The Grand Canyon doesn't care about human history. It makes human history look like yesterday's news.
Is this normal? Guys, they put the whole car in there. No. I don't even know what to say. How can they even run out of stock? There's just too much. There's too much. Thank you. We start off the day with some pizza with pepperoni on top. Ooh, what do we have here?
Wildlife encounters that are routine in America, bears, mountain lions, alligators, are so uncommon in Europe, they've become mythological. A British hiker in Colorado saw a moose and reacted like he'd seen a UFO. American nature operates at a different scale of indifference to human convenience. Safety gets heavily distorted in international media. Crime in certain American cities is presented as a cautionary tale, but most tourists don't visit high-crime neighborhoods. A Copenhagen resident who'd absorbed the entire European narrative about American danger flew to New York expecting chaos. What he found was one of the cleanest, most orderly major transit systems he'd navigated, populated by police officers genuinely interested in helping tourists. An English traveler at a baseball stadium documented a police officer helping him navigate the city's transit with almost maternal patience. Back home, a waiter is a professional who takes your order. In America, it feels more personal.
Okay, so I'm here in America celebrating America's birthday. 250th birthday. Check this out. Whoa, look at all the horses. 4th of July goes crazy. Wow, this is insane to see. Everyone's out here camping, sitting around, watching the parade. This is truly patriotic. Happy birthday, America.
A German visitor to Miami noted that her preconception of American cities as lawless seemed shaped by news coverage rather than actual conditions on the ground. Does this mean America doesn't have real crime? No. But the lived experience of a tourist is often safer and more orderly than expected. The economic picture is where you can't hide behind narrative. Numbers are numbers. A German software engineer who relocated to San Francisco documented his salary conversion. His equivalent position in Berlin paid about $60,000. San Francisco paid $135,000 annually. Rent in Berlin cost about $1,300 for a nice two-bedroom. The same apartment in San Francisco costs $4,000. So San Francisco is more expensive. But his take-home was still nearly double what it would have been in Germany, and his rent was roughly triple. That's the calculation reshaping how educated Europeans think about opportunity. His marginal tax rate in Germany would have been 42% plus solidarity surcharge. In California, combined taxes run about 40%. His net purchasing power, even accounting for higher rent, was dramatically higher. An Austrian accountant made similar calculations and concluded that even accounting for housing, wealth accumulation was faster in the United States. Healthcare, which gets cited constantly as a counterargument, was handled through his employer. For most workers in major corporate environments, employer healthcare essentially solves the problem looming large in European critiques.
Cheesecake Factory in Los Angeles. I'm gonna try cheesecake for the first time. This is a big ass cheesecake. This is unbelievable and I'm never coming home. Do you know what is coming home? Fucking football!
An educated worker in a growing field in America might actually give you more time, more money, more space, and more possibility than staying in Europe. The emotional glue holding all this together is patriotism. Not nationalism, patriotism. The casual, ambient, utterly assumed love of country woven into American public life in ways Europeans would consider excessive or dangerous. Flags everywhere. The national anthem at sports events. Small-town main streets celebrating local identity. A French visitor raised to see patriotism as a warning sign of fascism went to a high school football game in Texas and watched a community gather around shared local identity. The experience didn't radicalize him. It confused him. The patriotism wasn't aggressive or coercive. It was just assumed. That's rare in Europe, where history made patriotism seem dangerous. A Swedish visitor watched her daughter, after 3 months in American school, develop strong positive feelings about the United States simply through exposure to an educational environment that assumed patriotism was normal and good. That transmission is subtle but powerful. The individual liberty frame matters too. In America, there's a baseline assumption that what you do with your own life is your own business. You want to work 80 hours a week? Fine. Start a business in your garage. Americans assume you should. A German entrepreneur noted that the ambient social message in America was that you could do whatever you wanted with your life, and you'd be celebrated for taking the risk. Whereas in Germany, the message was to think carefully about disrupting the established order. Food culture reveals another layer. American food operates on volume and convenience in ways that fascinate Europeans. The drive-thru isn't just a fast food mechanism. It's embedded so deeply that vast sections of the economy are built around eating in cars. A Danish family documented the normalization of buying food and consuming it while driving. This seemed like a loss to them. But to many Americans, it's freedom. Time is a commodity, and acquiring a meal without stopping is practical efficiency. Portion sizes in restaurants are famous in this discussion, but the lived experience differs. An Italian visitor trained to see large portions as wasteful realized that the question is cultural and mathematical. American restaurants assume you might take food home. European restaurants assume you eat what's in front of you and leave.
Up for the bacon, man. That is so crispy. That is so good. Let's try a bit of the hash brown.
I didn't know what that was at
Yeah,
first.
this isn't the normal kind of hash brown that I see. Oh my god.
Yeah. Good.
That combination is
Yeah.
so good.
A British visitor kept returning to the same point. A waiter asked how he wanted his food prepared, made specific recommendations, and treated him like his satisfaction mattered. Back home, the transaction is clear. In America, it feels more personal. That personalization extends across retail. A Swedish customer at a Whole Foods ordered something complex, and the staff member explained alternatives, asked clarifying questions, and seemed invested in the customer getting what they actually wanted. Here's what keeps appearing across these testimonials. When you actually go to America, the central narrative that's been told about it in Europe starts to crack. The story about decline, delusion, and crumbling infrastructure isn't what people encounter. What they encounter is abundance, genuine friendliness, beautiful infrastructure, technological sophistication, and an ambient sense that life is still possible and potentially generous. That doesn't erase American problems. Crime exists in certain neighborhoods. Healthcare is broken for uninsured people. Inequality is massive. Racial injustice has deep structural roots. But that coexists with the lived experience of tourists, which is often profoundly positive. The shift isn't about America being perfect. It's about updating assumptions based on actual evidence. A Spanish academic spent a semester teaching in the United States and went home trying to explain to colleagues that his preconceptions were significantly wrong. The buildings were nicer. The people were kinder. The infrastructure was more impressive. He couldn't point to a smoking gun moment. It was accumulation of small evidence that contradicted the narrative.
No way that this is normal. Look at this. Like, this is a high school stadium. What? Look at the amount of seats in this place. Do they actually fill these stadiums? Like, do people actually come for the games that actually fill these out? Because that's honestly mental. Like, that.
An English journalist visited intending to write a critical piece and came back confused because she couldn't find the crisis she'd expected to document. The cities weren't collapsing. The people weren't desperate. A French tourist who'd absorbed decades of media about decline arrived in Seattle and found gleaming tech campuses, thriving nightlife, beautiful parks, and seemingly unlimited opportunity for educated people. He kept saying the same thing. Nobody told me it was like this. He's not alone. Thousands of European travelers are having versions of this experience and sharing it online, slowly reshaping what Europeans think is possible. The pattern that keeps appearing is a kind of apology, implicit or explicit. Europeans who arrive skeptical are leaving having to admit they were wrong. A German visitor to Austin said, "I came here expecting to confirm that America was falling apart. Instead, I found a place doing things right in ways I hadn't expected." A Swedish student who went for a semester abroad came back unable to maintain her former skepticism. She'd made friends, had experiences, encountered genuine kindness and opportunity. The intellectual framework she'd been operating within couldn't accommodate what she'd actually seen. That pattern, skeptical departure, positive experience, reluctant readmission of assumptions, is the real shift happening right now. It's not that Europeans have decided America is great. It's that the gap between inherited narrative and actual reality has become too large to ignore. That gap is driving the actual conversation in European circles, not politics or culture wars, but simply, what are we getting wrong about this place? And maybe the better question is, if the story you've been told about a place turns out incomplete or misleading, what does that suggest about how you should update your thinking? Not just about America, but about the reliability of narratives you're absorbing about anywhere. These tourists didn't become pro-America advocates. They became more careful thinkers. They realized that media narratives, no matter how widely held, can be shaped by what sells and what confirms existing beliefs, rather than what's true on the ground. That realization is valuable independent of whether you like America. The story you tell yourself about any distant place might be incomplete. Once you've seen that your picture was incomplete, it's very hard to trust it in the same way again. So here's the question I want to leave you with. What narratives have you absorbed without testing them against reality? And would you be willing to have that tested? If you want more analysis that challenges assumptions and digs into what's actually happening, like this video and subscribe to see the next breakdown. Smash that notification bell so you never miss when we drop the next piece. And if you want to share this with friends and have the conversation about how we actually think about the world, that's exactly what we're here for.
The first time.
Good?
Really, really good. Like the quality is really good.
Before we wrap, I need to be clear about what this is. This piece synthesizes publicly available media, social media testimonials, tourist vlogs, and news coverage to explore a real pattern in how travel experiences are reshaping European perceptions. The anecdotes are drawn from real documented experiences, but this is a thematic synthesis, not a comprehensive survey. This doesn't represent the complete lived reality of every person in Europe or America. It doesn't represent official policy or systematic truth. We've done our best to be rigorous, but this content doesn't constitute professional analysis, and you should always do your own research and form your own opinions based on multiple sources. Individual travel experiences are individual experiences. They don't prove universal truths. Media narratives, including this one, are always simplified versions of complexity. This video has been created for discussion and educational purposes, and you should remain discerning about everything you watch, including this. We're not here to attack or stereotype any group or nation. We're here to notice patterns and have thoughtful conversations about what they mean.